Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Disgustedly accepting a box with a surprise from her beggar daughter-in-law, the mother-in-law threw it away in front of the guests. If only she knew. Candy ruffled the sleepy Melita's hair and, picking her daughter up in her arms, took her to the nursery. "Mommy, do you love me?" The girl mumbled. "Of course, I love you, my treasure," Candy smiled. "You're my little girl. But Grandma said that you don't love me, you just tolerate me because you're afraid of ending up on the street. Only she and Dad love me." "What nonsense!" The mother was taken aback. "You should listen to your grandmother less. Why did she even start such a conversation with you?" "Grandma always says you're bad," Melita yawned. "But I know she's lying. She always talks badly about you, but that's not true." "Melita, your grandmother is a complicated person," Candy sighed. "Don't listen to her, at least not in everything. She doesn't understand much. But she's already old. You know what? Not every elderly person is wise. Just because she has lived to her age doesn't give her the right to judge other people, let alone claim who loves whom and who doesn't. Sleep tight, sweetheart, you have to get up early tomorrow." "I love you, Mommy." Melita yawned. "May you have sweet dreams." "I love you, little kitty." Candy tucked the blanket around her, turned off the light in the nursery, and quietly closed the door. She walked to the kitchen, where her husband was already waiting for her with evening tea. "Candy, why do you look so sour?" Salvino asked, looking at his wife's puzzled face. "Don't tell me Melita is being fussy, I won't believe it anyway." "No, Melita is fine, she fell asleep instantly, she was tired today." "It's not about her." "Not about her? You were glowing with happiness 5 minutes ago. What could have happened in that time?" "Your mother happened, that's what," Candy said, brushing him off with annoyance. "God. What now?" Salvino frowned. "Did she call you so late?" "No, worse. After your visit to her today, my own daughter claims that I don't love her. You see, Grandma told her more nasty things about me and even hinted that I don't just not love the child, but I tolerate her because I'm afraid of ending up on the street. Can you believe that?" "Candy," Salvino smiled and hugged his wife tightly, "how many times have I told you, ignore her? Mom is not a bad person, but life has worn her down, and she takes it out on everyone around her." "Salvino, this is completely unacceptable." "Okay, she personally tells me that she's dissatisfied, constantly reproaching me for my low origins, and so on. But to act so sneakily through the child? Don't you understand that Senora Claudia is manipulating Melita? She knows very well that at this age, you can plant any ideas in a child's head. Why is she picking on me?" "Candy, it doesn't matter what my mom has concocted in her mind," Salvino stroked his wife's head. "You know she's overly demanding, but at her age, it's not going to change. It's easier just to ignore her. Well, she pulls those kinds of stunts. Melita isn't stupid, even though she's only 5, she doesn't take her grandmother's words seriously. I've already talked to my mom about this. Do you think I don't notice anything? I'm a good husband, aren't I? She still treats you fine. It was worse before the wedding, you remember that. If I listen to you, she'll love me in about 15 years. Candy pouted. "Well, yeah. What choice does she have? Besides, there's nothing terrible about a conflict between a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. You don't have to love each other at all. After all, you only see each other a couple of times a month at most. I take Melita to her on weekends, so it's not that hard to endure a cranky aunt for a couple of hours." "Salvino, that's not normal," Candy protested. "I do everything to meet her high ideals, but I don't understand what else she wants. I love you and don't leave you without care and attention. She wanted grandchildren, here you go. I gave birth to a wonderful girl, beautiful, healthy, and clever. The house is always in exemplary order, and I'm working too, I'm not just sitting at home. What doesn't she like? She thinks she's an aristocrat and takes it out on common people like me. My dear, don't go to extremes. Salvino sighed. Yes, Mom always thought of herself as a lady from high society. For her, there's nothing worse than poverty and a lack of upbringing. And no matter how you slice it, she doesn't see you as her equal. So whatever you do, she won't like it. You know very well how she reacted when I wanted to marry you. But honestly, even though I love my mother, her opinion means nothing to me. It's not her who has to live with you, it's me, so she can keep her opinion to herself. She pouted for a bit, and then stopped. And since Melita came along, it's all been smooth sailing. Smooth sailing, you say? Candy smirked. Senora Claudia never misses a chance to remind me of my father, a criminal who left my mother and me. She constantly laments, God forbid, Melita gets her grandfather's genes. And in general, both my mother and I are clearly not of great intellect, considering we barely got by. And how do I explain to her that there's nothing shameful about being poor? We weren't living in poverty. Yes, when I was very little, my mom had to juggle 3 jobs to earn money to send to my father. But then, thank God, her eyes were opened when she realized that Daddy was living quite well in prison and was just using her to avoid wanting for anything while serving his time. And when he got out, how much stress he put my mom through. In the end, he ran off with another woman who apparently had been having an affair with him even while he was in the colony, and it didn't stop him that he had a child, nor that his mother worked herself to the bone for him. So what was my fault? I didn't choose my father. And my mom? Yes, she's a simple woman. But does that make her a second-class person? Not everyone is born with a silver spoon in their mouth like Senora Claudia. That's it. Candy, don't get worked up. Rise above this. Salvino kissed her. Who cares about my mom's opinions? Okay, Salvino, you probably see it better. But I'm begging you, let's cut down the time Senora Claudia spends with Melita. Here you're wrong. Her husband frowned. If we do that, she'll turn even more against you. Do you want that? It'll also stress me out. Let things go as they are. Let's not get involved. Time heals. You'll see, a few years will pass, and Mom will change. Yeah, sure. Candy grimaced. You yourself say that people don't change at her age. Oh, whatever. Let her say what she wants. That's right. Maybe we should go to bed. Tomorrow is Monday, and we both have work. We need our sleep. After finishing her work, Candy got in the car and headed to pick up her daughter from kindergarten. She was shocked when the teacher informed her that Melita had already been picked up by her grandmother. This had happened before, but Senora Claudia always notified them in advance of her intention to pick up her granddaughter herself. This time, neither Candy nor her son had received a call from her. Angered by her mother-in-law's self-initiative, Candy immediately drove to her house to get her daughter. She had no desire to see Senora Claudia, especially after yesterday's conversation with Melita had severely impacted her self-esteem. Her mother-in-law lived in the center of town, in an old building with a stucco facade. After parking haphazardly, Candy made her way to meet the Gorgon, as she called her husband's mother. Passing by the condescending concierge, who shot Candy a disdainful glance, the girl climbed to the 3rd floor, where her mother-in-law's apartment was located. A huge oak door with a gilded nameplate uninvitingly blocked her path. Gathering her courage, Candy pressed the doorbell. A melodic trill echoed from within the apartment. A few moments later, the door opened, and Teresa, Senora Claudia's housekeeper, appeared in the doorway. "Good evening, Senora Candy," the housekeeper said through gritted teeth. "Hello, Teresa." Candy replied firmly. "Is Senora Claudia home?" "Yes, come in and wait. I will inform the lady of the house." The housekeeper seated Candy on a sofa in the spacious hall and then disappeared deeper into the apartment. "This is unbelievable. I came for my own child, and they won't even let me in past the threshold. And this is supposed to be family? Candy fumed to herself while waiting for her mother-in-law. I wonder, if I had come with Salvino, would I have to wait in the hall too? The Gorgon has completely lost her mind. She treats me like a servant. No matter what Salvino says, I won't let Melita come here again. Plus, I don't see much joy in her visiting her grandmother anyway. Candy? Her mother-in-law's high voice rang out. Why didn't you give me a heads up? Senora Claudia, I came for Melita. I should be the one asking, why did you take her without warning? Candy felt herself getting worked up, but tried to keep her composure. A scandal with her mother-in-law wouldn't lead to anything good. I tried to call Salvino, Claudia stated without blinking, but his phone didn't answer. And I happened to be passing by the kindergarten, so I thought I could pick up Melita. What's the problem? I'm her grandmother and have every right to see my granddaughter at any time. Are you serious? Candy frowned. Why didn't you call me? I specifically finished work early today to pick up my daughter and take her to the park, as I promised. It turns out you made me look like a liar in front of her. How are you talking to me? Her mother-in-law flushed with anger. Are you mixing things up, Candy? I'm not a stranger to Melita. It's never been the case that you've forbidden me to see her. The girl was very happy to see me, plus I picked her up when there were hardly any kids left in the group. You say you left work early? What time do you usually pick her up? Do you even think about your daughter's feelings? She sits there all alone, waiting impatiently for her busy mommy to come and get her. Senora Claudia, you're exaggerating. Melita knows that I always pick her up at 6 o'clock. I have never been late. And today I came at 5. Don't tell me that there were no children left in the group. Even at 6, not everyone gets picked up. Melita is not everyone. Her mother-in-law countered, changing the subject. And how many times have I raised the issue of my granddaughter not attending a kindergarten for ordinary children? And Salvino doesn't mind, you're the only one resisting. What's wrong with the kindergarten? Candy was surprised. Melita already has friends there, and she enjoys going. Besides, you can't deny the benefits of socialization for a child. Melita will be starting school in 2 years. Candy, Senora Claudia looked at her seriously. I understand you. You went to an ordinary kindergarten and school and truly believe that it should be this way. But believe me, there are more effective educational models. Melita is a capable child. You shouldn't confine her to the public education system. What will she gain there? A standard curriculum? The envy of her classmates? You know what's happening in schools nowadays. If I were a conscientious parent, I would think 3 times before condemning my daughter to such torments. Besides, it's not fitting for a girl of her status to study among. Among whom? Candy interrupted. The dregs? That's what you usually call ordinary people. Senora Claudia, I respect your opinion, but I ask you to understand me too. Just because Salvino earns well doesn't mean Melita should hold her head high like you do. I want my daughter to grow up to be a decent person first and foremost. You're right. Melita is a capable girl, very curious, and already significantly outpaces her peers. But as her mother, I believe, and Salvino fully supports me, that a child should develop alongside her peers. We shouldn't uproot her from society. My husband and I will give her everything we can, and we will choose a good school, but we will never raise a snob or a hypocrite. Is that what you think of me? Senora Claudia was taken aback. How else? Candy smirked, no longer fearing that she would anger her mother-in-law. For some reason, at that moment, she just didn't care anymore. You, Senora Claudia, see a speck in someone else's eye but fail to notice the log in your own. You constantly reproach me for coming from a poor family, flaunt your wealth, hint to your son that I'm not worthy of him, even though we've been married for years and are raising a wonderful daughter. And here you are, a lonely aging lady who, out of boredom, doesn't know what to do with herself and constantly sticks her nose into other people's lives. Have your riches brought you much happiness? Salvino doesn't even want to come here anymore because you've driven him crazy with your constant nitpicking. You only care about money. You can't take it with you when you go. Yes, I come from a poor family, but I don't consider that a vice, unlike you. But I am happy. I have loved ones by my side, not a soulless housekeeper and equally soulless diamonds. Think about it, Senora Claudia, while there's still time. Is this the path you want to take? Right now, you're turning my own child against me, not realizing that she understands everything perfectly and already sees that her own grandmother is not a very good person. And what will happen in 5 or 10 years? All you'll achieve is complete contempt from your granddaughter. She may be small now, and you can take her from kindergarten without asking. You'd be better off thinking about how to avoid being all alone in old age. Or do you think you can surround yourself with a bunch of caregivers, pay them with stacks of cash, and peacefully depart from this world? You need to be kinder. By the way, I've been your relative for 6 years now, and you still treat me like a servant in the hallway. Is that normal to you? Answer me this, why are you like this? Can one person really be concentrated with so much hatred and disdain just because someone is lower on the social ladder? I sometimes even wonder how such a terrible woman like you could have such a wonderful son like Salvino. Have you said everything? Her mother-in-law asked coldly when Candy's verbal stream finally ran dry. If so, I ask you to leave my apartment and not return here in the future. With pleasure. Candy smirked. But I'm taking Melita. I actually came for her. Or do you think I'll just leave her with you? I promised the child I'd take her to the park, and I intend to keep my word, no matter what you think of me. Melita is currently having an English lesson with a tutor. Senora Claudia narrowed her eyes. The lesson is already paid for, so you can wait here for another half hour. What tutor, Senora Claudia? Melita is only 5. How long has she been taking English? She hasn't mentioned anything to me. Today is her first lesson. Salvino and I discussed it. Oh, really? He hasn't discussed anything with me, Candy mimicked. I'm not going to overload my daughter with classes. Their group in kindergarten is strong enough. This is sufficient. The last thing we need is for Melita to lose her childhood. Where is she? Candy resolutely headed toward the living area of the apartment, remembering that the housekeeper had mentioned a greenhouse. Her mother-in-law tried to block her path. Candy, it's rude and just plain ugly to interrupt the lesson. What will the teacher think? That she walked into some hovel? Let the girl finish her lesson in peace. And let's be reasonable. Yes, I may have rushed into language studies. But what if Melita likes it? As a mother, you can't deny her that. Then we'll figure it out. If Melita wants to study English with a tutor, she can come to me anytime. If not, then I'll concede, even though I believe that the earlier a child starts learning languages, the better. Fine, Candy sighed. You're right. I'll wait in the car, but in half an hour, I expect my daughter downstairs. Claudia sat on her spacious balcony, sipping tea prepared by Teresa. Her nerves were frayed after her daughter-in-law left, and the longer it went on, the worse she felt. Candy's words about lonely old age had hurt Claudia deeply. No matter how much she disliked her son's wife, she was right. What good were all these riches when no one would wish her a good morning besides the housekeeper? More than anything in the world, Claudia feared not poverty, as Candy suggested, but loneliness, a gray feeling that scraped away at her soul from the inside. Salvino had grown up and only came to visit when he brought Melita. He didn't always answer her calls, and when he did, he limited himself to polite phrases. Melita was the only joy for Senora Claudia. She loved her granddaughter, but she couldn't help the feeling she had toward her daughter-in-law. It was already dark, and a pair of moths buzzed against the lanterns hanging on the wall. The buzzing reminded Claudia of her youth. There was an evening just like this one when a couple of butterflies fluttered their wings against a glass lampshade. The place was different, and the light fixture was just a lamp hanging from the ceiling of the hayloft in her grandfather's house, where Claudia Ferres, then a 19-year-old, had once lived. She was a beauty. Her parents, a couple of ordinary employees at a large research institute, often sent their daughter to stay with her grandfather for the summer. The stern old man named Fidel lived alone, having buried his wife, Claudia's grandmother, several years earlier. He didn't like to talk and generally had difficulty connecting with others, so from the age of 13, Claudia found her own chores and entertainment. When she turned 19, life in the village began to worsen. Fidel started distilling moonshine. One day, Claudia went down to the cellar without asking and saw a distillation apparatus, neat rows of flasks and test tubes, and a hoard of various tinctures in bottles. She didn't say anything to her grandfather or her parents, even though she understood perfectly well that Fidel could face a hefty sentence for his hobby. She decided it would be her personal secret. But soon, Claudia forgot all about the contents of the cellar. The reason was a boy who appeared next door. The handsome lad was named Tomas. Like Claudia, he had come here to visit relatives. Tomas was in his 4th year at the Polytechnic, but was struggling with his studies. He had flunked his exams and was preparing to go to the army in the fall. With the friendly beauty Claudia, Tomas quickly found common ground. He began to visit her often, helping around the house. At that time, her grandfather had taken to drinking heavily and hardly left the house, and the garden couldn't take care of itself, nor could the livestock. Claudia couldn't manage it all by herself. For 2 weeks, while Fidel was in a drunken stupor, Claudia and Tomas managed the household. She didn't even notice how she fell head over heels in love. The feelings were vibrant and mutual. It was late August, and one evening, Claudia and Tomas lay in the hayloft, resting from their daily chores. 2 butterflies fluttered against the dim light bulb that barely illuminated the space under the roof. "Will you marry me?" Tomas suddenly asked, holding Claudia close to his chest. "Are you joking?" The girl yawned. "My parents would never agree." "Claudia, we're both adults. What do parents have to do with it?" The guy was surprised. "I love you more than anyone else in the world. Isn't that the main thing?" "I love you too, Tomas." "But, can there really be a but?" Tomas smiled. "Claudia, I understand that we've only known each other for a couple of months, but I've already decided that I want to spend the rest of my days with you. I've never felt anything like this before. You know what they say, a friend is recognized in trouble. And what trouble do we have?" Claudia smirked. "And it's about friendship, not love. A beloved one is also recognized in difficulties." The guy philosophically declared. "I see that you're not thrilled about your eternally drunk grandfather slaving away in the garden when you could have stayed in the city and lived comfortably. You're a beautiful girl. Someone like you should be taken to restaurants, not cow sheds. But you handle it all calmly, you don't throw tantrums or complain. I believe a real woman should be like that. Nowadays, girls are all about dating the wealthier ones. Yes, I'm just an ordinary student, even expelled, from a poor family, and I can fully understand your doubts about our future. But believe me, once I serve in the army, I'll return and reinstate myself at the institute. We'll live well. Even if studying doesn't work out, I'll go to the factory. I'll do everything so that you won't lack for anything. When a person has motivation and a goal, they can move mountains. I swear to you that I will never let you down." "You swear?" Claudia looked at him. "I swear on my life." Tomas replied passionately. "Claudia, you'll live like a queen with me. I'll pull you out of this poverty. Someone like you shouldn't walk around in cheap rags and carry water with yokes. I won't be around for a couple of years. You'll finish your studies in the meantime, and then I have an apartment from my grandmother, though it's not fancy, but we have to start somewhere. We'll fix it up, have kids, and settle down." "Oh," Tomas looked Claudia aside. "It all sounds so good in words, but life isn't always that simple. And the army. You know there's a war in Afghanistan right now. What if they send you there? I wouldn't be able to find peace with all the constant worries. Why do you think they'd send me to Afghanistan? First of all, it's calmer there now than it was a couple of years ago. They say everything will end soon. Secondly, they say they don't send draftees there. So, what do you say? Will you marry me? Yes. Claudia leaned in. But only when you come back. I promise you that I will wait. For now, I'll prepare my parents mentally so they know I've made my choice, since my mom is always trying to set me up with some of her acquaintances. Well, it's a deal. Tomas pulled the girl close to him. So for now, let's exchange vows. The guy pulled out a couple of purple flower clusters from somewhere in the hay and carefully divided them in half. Here, he offered one of the flowers to Claudia. Take this as a sign of my eternal love. Dry it between the pages of a book, and when you feel sad, take it out and remember me. And I'll dry mine and carry it near my heart in a locket so that your love always protects me. A week later, Claudia returned to the city. The new school year was approaching. In mid-September, Tomas was drafted into the army. While seeing him off at the train station, Claudia, who had run away from classes, cried. The departure of the train was already announced, but the girl couldn't release her embrace. A week later, Tomas called her and informed her that his unit was being sent to Kandahar almost in full strength. The unusual name meant nothing to Claudia, but her heart tightened anxiously at his words. That was the last time she heard her beloved's voice. Just a few days later, her mother told her that Tomas had died in battle. Claudia couldn't believe it. She locked herself in her room and cried helplessly, clutching a tiny square of epoxy resin that held a nameless purple flower forever sealed inside. A month later, Claudia realized that something strange was happening with her body. She became extremely sensitive to smells, her breasts ached intolerably, and frequent nausea made it hard to sit through classes and sleep. You look pregnant, my friend, her classmate Eleonora remarked one day. You should see a gynecologist. It might not be too late to get rid of the pregnancy. Eleonora was well aware of the tragic romance of her friend and firmly believed that giving birth under the current circumstances was sheer foolishness. Claudia listened to her and went to the women's clinic, where her gloomy suspicions were confirmed. Then came the difficult conversation with her parents. Contrary to expectations, Claudia's mother took a firm stance. She said it was necessary to give birth. It was clear that she would have to forget about her studies. Claudia was beside herself with grief. She wanted a child with Tomas, but raising it without a father seemed unthinkable. She was scared of poverty, hardships, her father's judgment, the fear of the unknown, the necessity to give up her beloved studies and forget about her career. One day, Claudia was walking along the waterfront, completely unwilling to attend classes. She stood by the railing when a clear desire to end all her torment suddenly arose in her mind. The river was deep, and she couldn't swim. Figuring that if she fell into the river, she would surely drown, she looked around to make sure that no one would interfere with her plans. Suddenly, someone roughly grabbed her by the collar. Claudia screamed in surprise. What's wrong with you, you idiot? Planning to go for a swim? A young man in a black leather jacket held Claudia firmly by the collar of her coat. The season ended long ago. Or are you committing a sin? Have you lost your mind? You're so beautiful and young, and you think of doing this. Claudia stammered, realizing she was standing before a stranger, as red as a lobster. What? Don't you dare make up excuses. I was just passing by. A girl didn't show up for a date. See this bouquet? The guy pointed with his boot at a huge bunch of white chrysanthemums lying beside him. I had a feeling that a tragedy was about to happen here. So, are you calmed down? Now tell me what you were thinking of leaving in the river, Ophelia. Did Hamlet take advantage of you and leave? Claudia looked up at her rescuer with wide eyes and burst into tears. Ah, here we go, the stranger smirked grimly. Well, come on then. There's a cafe nearby. I'll buy you some cocoa. When a person is upset, it's vital to drink something hot. Or in your case, maybe something stronger. No. Claudia stammered through her tears. I don't drink, I can't. Oh really, but you can jump into the river? By the way, my name is Miguel. Claudia. Claudia. The guy mimicked. Let's go, Claudia. You've been saved, but now the harder work begins. Miguel took the girl to the nearest cafe, ordered both of them large servings of cocoa and a dish of ice cream. After taking a few sips, Claudia finally collected herself and only then realized how close she had come to making a terrible mistake. Miguel was watching her silently. His expression was extremely serious, despite his young age. Claudia estimated that he was probably a couple of years older than her. There was something in Miguel's appearance that made him very approachable. Claudia also remained silent, but at some point, she couldn't hold back and shared with her new acquaintance everything that had happened to her lately. So, why did you go swimming? Miguel looked at Claudia skeptically. A guy is gone. You're not the first. If all women decided to do this, especially when expecting a child after their husbands died, there'd be no one left in the world. Are your parents okay with you having a child? Are your arms, legs, and head all intact? What's the problem? Easy for you to say, Claudia scoffed. I don't want to raise a child in poverty. And besides, you probably never loved anyone, so you don't understand me. What does love have to do with it? Answer me this, the guy is gone, but you're alive and well. Money can be made. Why put a cross on yourself? Especially as a future mother. It would be a sin to take such a path. You're being foolish, Claudia. Love is when you keep a memory of a person and move on. What you are about to do is pure selfishness. Have you thought about your parents? No. Claudia blushed with shame. She had already regretted her thoughts, but for some reason, she liked that Miguel was scolding her. Now tell me, the guy suddenly changed the subject. I take it you don't have much to lose? Well, you could say that. Then maybe you'd consider marrying me? What? Claudia froze, not understanding why Miguel was joking so strangely. Yes, I know it might seem weird. Well, the thing is, I was supposed to go to the city hall with a girl today, but as you can see, she didn't show up. And I really need to get married. My parents are diplomats serving in Germany, and they're trying to pull me over there. I just graduated from the Institute of International Relations and got my diploma in June. I've received confirmation for a position at the embassy, and I'm supposed to start working in November. But there's a catch. According to the conditions, I must be married. And where am I supposed to find a wife? I persuaded one of my friends. She initially agreed, but it turned out she has someone and isn't ready to just cut ties with her past. But there's no need to sever anything. She can always come back here anytime. So I thought maybe you'd agree. I agree, Claudia mumbled, looking at the empty cocoa glass. What? You agree? Yes, the girl nodded. It will be hard here anyway, so at least I'll get to see the world. Claudia, don't worry about expecting a child. For me, it's even better that my wife is pregnant. It gives several advantages at work. You'll have as much money as you want. I've been to Germany several times and even to Italy. You'll like it there. A beautiful woman like you deserves to live beautifully, not to languish here alone in poverty, especially with a small child in your arms. I swear I won't bother you. This marriage will be purely formal, it's for appearances. I'll accept the child as my own and will register me as the father. I'll never say a word against you. If this goes against your morals in any way, we can discuss everything. Nothing goes against my morals. Claudia countered. I'm saying I agree. Great. Do you have your passport with you? Passport? Yes, passport. I have an appointment to register at the city hall in an hour. Of course, another bride is indicated, but my boss is a friend of my mom's. She'll fix it without any problems. But I'm not dressed for this, Claudia weakly protested. Oh, what? Do you want a lavish wedding with a dress and doves? We can quickly stop by a familiar dealer. He'll get you a nice French suit. We were planning to go there with Giovanna anyway. You two have similar figures and heights. And what about your parents? What about them? Well, won't they be against it? Oh, don't make me laugh. Mom arranged all this herself. What matters more to her is my career. You understand, it's an uneasy time. So it's better to think about practical matters rather than love. Why is it uneasy? Claudia gasped. It's nothing, just rumors. And that's not the point, Miguel waved it off. We don't have time to discuss this anymore. We need to head to the city hall and then go get the clothes. Miguel led Claudia to a large pavilion near the bus stop and gallantly opened the door of his car. It was a sparkling bright red car with chrome details, a dream for anyone. Claudia had never even stood next to such a car in her life. The interior was beige, and the quilted seats beckoned her to sit down, which she did. From that day on, Claudia's life changed drastically. Her parents didn't particularly approve of such a strange marriage, but the prospect of becoming related to an influential family outweighed their prejudices. In November, Claudia and Miguel moved to Germany. Miguel didn't deceive her. His young wife wanted for nothing, and gradually, romantic feelings began to develop between them. Of course, it couldn't really be called love, but Claudia deeply respected her husband and did everything she could to avoid disappointing him. In May, the couple had a wonderful, healthy boy named Salvino. Miguel was enamored with the child and acted like a model father. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, the couple had to return to their homeland, but it didn't affect the family's wealth. Thanks to Miguel's parents' connections, he landed a job at the German embassy. Claudia took care of their little son. She had a housekeeper, a nanny, and even a personal chef at her disposal. By contemporary standards, their family was considered very affluent. Influential people frequently visited their home. Their social circle was rapidly expanding. The refrigerator was always stocked with food, and the wardrobe was filled with expensive clothes. Little Salvino started school, not just any school, but a prestigious gymnasium with a language focus. Claudia quickly forgot about the hardships of life, becoming a true socialite. Miguel's career was on the rise. Their family transformed from well-off to wealthy. At the same time, Claudia ventured into entrepreneurship, opening a couple of small hotels. Over 10 years, her hobby grew into a large hotel chain across the country, bringing in a stable income. Their son was growing up, and although Miguel was rarely home, he continued to increase the family's wealth. Life continued on its course. Claudia could even call herself happy. Yet sometimes, she still felt lonely. In those moments, she would lock herself in her bedroom, take out the tiny square of epoxy resin from her jewelry box, tightly squeeze it in her palm, and cry softly. In the mid-2000s, Miguel suffered a massive heart attack. Later, Claudia learned that at the time of the attack, her husband was with another woman, and that's why his heart couldn't take it. Miguel died in the hospital. His wife was inconsolable with grief. By that time, their son was already a third-year student and had withdrawn into himself. Salvino loved his father, and he couldn't comprehend how such a relatively young man could die so suddenly. He was the first to find out what had really happened. Miguel's mistress came to him, asking for money in exchange for her silence. He kicked the shameless girl out, as there was no longer any point in worrying about reputation. However, Salvino decided to keep this information from his mother for a while, fearing that her heart couldn't take it either. He confessed accidentally during an argument over something trivial. Contrary to her son's fears, Claudia reacted calmly to the news of her late husband's infidelity. "Aren't you going to say anything?" Salvino was outraged, clearly troubled by the fact much more than she was. "What am I supposed to say?" Claudia replied impassively. "Aren't you hurt? You and Dad loved each other for so many years, and then there's this betrayal. And it ended fatally, no less." Salvino, his mother, pushed her chair away from the large dining table and sat down. "You don't know much, and I probably should have told you everything sooner, but now it doesn't matter. You see, your father isn't really your father at all." "What are you saying?" Salvino felt his legs go weak and sat down beside his mother. "When I found out I was pregnant with you, I nearly did something foolish. But Miguel saved me in every sense. Claudia told her son everything, leaving out no details. Everything that's left of your father. She showed Salvino a small transparent square with a flower inside. Once, Tomas and I swore that these flowers would symbolize our love. Yes, we barely knew each other, but that was enough for a real feeling to settle in my heart forever. When I feel bad, I always take out this talisman, and it instantly lightens my heart. I respected Miguel immensely. I treated him more like a brother, a friend, but I never loved him. I knew perfectly well that he had other women. We got married from the start, understanding that it was just for certain benefits, for both of us. Essentially, I was always just his official cover. And so what if he had mistresses? I remained loyal to your real father, Tomas, my entire life. God is my witness, I never once cheated on him, even in my thoughts. So you're saying that you and Dad never had anything over all these years? Nothing, Claudia blushed. You probably won't understand, but sometimes that happens. I promised Tomas that I would wait for him, and I'm keeping my word. Mom, he's been gone for over 20 years. What's the point? When you truly love someone, Claudia stroked her son's hand, you'll understand what true fidelity is and why it's important. And death is not always a reason to stop loving someone. When Salvino turned 30, he realized he had finally met the one. The modest girl Candy immediately caught his attention. Before meeting her, he had experienced unsuccessful relationships. His first girlfriend had started dating him back in college. She came from a wealthy family and was very much liked by Senora Claudia, but 3 years into their relationship, Salvino caught her cheating. For a couple of years, he didn't trust women at all until he met his second girlfriend. The playful and cheerful Florisa was also liked by his mother. The couple lived in the apartment that Claudia had bought for Salvino, but after a year and a half, it turned out that Florisa was regularly using some kind of drugs and had been in a rehabilitation center more than once. At first, Salvino convinced himself and his mother that he would help his beloved overcome her illness. But when another relapse occurred after her latest release and Florisa was caught stealing jewelry from Claudia's apartment, their relationship came to an end. After Florisa, Salvino had fleeting flings, and his mother was deeply concerned that her son was unlucky in love. Moreover, Claudia was very eager for grandchildren. As the years sped toward 50, living alone in a huge apartment where every corner reminded her of her late husband and their once happy life became unbearable. Claudia still feared loneliness. She had even hired a housekeeper not so much to keep things in order but for some social interaction. By that time, Salvino lived separately, was absorbed in his work, and rarely visited his mother. But that evening, he unexpectedly showed up without warning. When his surprised mother heard from the housekeeper who had come, she immediately rushed out to greet him, but Salvino was not alone. A petite girl in a gray coat and dirty boots stood beside him. At first, Claudia thought her son had brought her a new housekeeper. They had recently discussed this topic, but Salvino surprised her. "Mom, meet Candy." "Candy?" Claudia raised her eyebrows. The tone with which her son introduced the girl did not inspire confidence. "Yes, she will soon become my wife," Salvino proudly announced, removing his companion's coat. Candy stood there like a mouse. Claudia, like a hawk spotting its prey, scrutinized her critically. Cheap suit, unmanicured nails, a haphazardly done makeup and hairstyle, clearly not from a salon. "Well, come in," she said tersely. Right away, Claudia didn't like the girl. She looked poor, cowered in a corner like a frightened animal, and spoke indistinctly. It was obvious that Salvino was out of her league. Besides, this Candy was 5 to 7 years younger than him. Remembering her son's past unsuccessful romances, Claudia would have looked skeptically at any girl he brought home, but this announcement of an upcoming wedding completely stunned her. When the girl, looking bewildered at the ornate stucco, antique furniture, and huge mirrors, walked into the dining room, Claudia held her son back. "Salvino, wait. I hope you're joking." "What are you talking about, Mom?" The guy looked at her in confusion. "About the wedding. Who is this girl, anyway?" I understand you're still struggling with the breakup with Florisa, but that's no reason to drag the first stray dog you find into our home. Candy is not a stray. Salvino looked at his mother in surprise. Are you put off by her appearance? Believe me, Mom, you couldn't find a better girl. I love Candy. I didn't tell you before, I kept putting it off, but we've been dating for almost 8 months, and I've decided that this woman will be the mother of my children. You'll see, appearances can be deceiving. Candy looks scared all the time, but there are reasons for that. Otherwise, she is really great, smart and honest. And I love her. Love. What else have you come up with, Salvino? It's clear even to a fool that this girl has latched onto a bigger piece and is dragging it into her hole like a rat. Where did you even find her? Did you see how her eyes lit up when she saw the chandelier? Mom, what chandelier? Candy was amazed by all this splendor. She has never seen chandeliers like this in her life. And anyway, to be honest, she had no idea that I have a wealthy mother. I've always told Candy that my family is completely ordinary. My mother is a grieving widow. She doesn't even know how much I actually earn. I always took my work car if I had to drive her somewhere. I'm not stupid. I understand that girls nowadays are only interested in money, but Candy is special. I even borrowed money from her a couple of times for show. She always gave me her last bit. I don't know, son. To me, she seems like a common fraud. Stop it. You're seeing her for the first time. I've known her for a long time, and I'm 100% sure that she's my true love. Didn't you tell me that if such a feeling arises, it should be cherished like the apple of your eye? So keep in mind, even if you take Candy the wrong way, it won't change my decision to marry her. I've made up my mind, and you know me. Claudia could only sigh heavily and head to the dining room. The conversation wasn't going well, despite Salvino's best efforts to lighten the mood. Claudia was annoyed that her son's chosen one knew nothing about art, couldn't tell a dessert fork from a fish fork, rested her elbows on the table, and had never even been abroad. The girl radiated poverty and bad taste from a mile away, and Claudia had a real allergy to that. Meanwhile, Candy cheerfully talked about how much she loved spending time in the countryside, shared details about her meetings with Salvino, and enthusiastically discussed chemistry and biology. As it turned out, she worked as a lab technician at a large pharmaceutical company. None of this interested Claudia at all. After Salvino and his girlfriend left, Claudia spent a long time fuming to herself, not understanding what he saw in her. What irritated her the most was that she saw herself in Candy, the same Claudia who swore love in the hayloft and had been running away from that life ever since Tomas was gone. Even the little coat on the girl was exactly like the one Claudia had almost worn when she made an irreversible mistake. Wandering through the shopping mall, Candy was genuinely distressed. She was racking her brain to figure out what to give her mother-in-law for her anniversary, which was just a few weeks away. She had no desire to attend the celebration, nor did she have an invitation to it. But Salvino insisted that a good gift was a great chance to win his mother's favor. Plus, it wouldn't be right to skip the celebration. Candy insisted that she would choose and buy the gift herself with her own money. Salvino, knowing his mother's penchant for expensive things, initially resisted, understanding that his wife's salary would hardly be enough for anything decent by Senora Claudia's standards. Candy moved from one department to another, examining expensive tableware, jewelry, handbags, and other potential gifts for a long time. But nothing seemed right, and Candy understood that perfectly. She even imagined how her mother-in-law would dismiss any present brought by her daughter-in-law. What on earth can I give this Gorgon? Candy fumed to herself. She already has everything. Even if I gift her a necklace with emeralds, she'll just toss it on a shelf and never remember it. No, it needs to be something different. Maybe I should consult Salvino. He, as her son, must know what would touch his mother's heart. When she returned home, Candy waited for her husband. Melita was at her grandmother's, learning the basics of English. After that incident, the women agreed that the girl would have lessons with a tutor twice a week. Candy didn't like it, but Melita was thrilled. Salvino returned around 7. Candy immediately pounced on him with complaints about not being able to find a gift for his mother. Well, how do I melt her heart? The girl asked. Even if I spend all my money, she'll still be unhappy. There must be something that touches her soul. Salvino, you're her son, you should know how to break through that armor. I'm just as confused, the man mumbled. Mom is overly demanding. Let's give her a vacation package somewhere, that will be a gift from all of us. After all, we're family. And it wouldn't hurt her to get away for a while, she sits in her palace like a princess locked up. It's a good idea, but I'd like to give her something memorable, you know? Candy persisted, although she was already leaning towards her husband's suggestion. Tell me, does your mother feel anything at all, or is she made of stone? I've never seen a real emotion on her face. Of course she feels. Life has forced her to close herself off in her shell and not show her true self. Don't make me laugh. Life forced her? Millions dream of such a life. She lacks for nothing, has a successful son, years of a happy marriage behind her, and money to spare. Yes, she's alone now, but she has a granddaughter. Thank God, she adores Melita. I'm not even against their communication, even though Senora Claudia can't stand me. What more could she want? And why hasn't she found anyone after your father died? Was it such a strong love? It's not that simple, my love, Salvino sighed heavily. I suppose I'll let you in on our family secret. My father isn't my biological father. No way. The girl was surprised. Yes, I found out after he died. And Mom didn't love him. They had, how should I put it, a partnership, an arranged marriage. It was a revelation for me because from the outside, it looked different. And Mom. You won't believe it, but she's been faithful to my real father her whole life. And where is he? Do you know? He died before I was born. He was drafted into the army, and then Afghanistan. He didn't even serve a month, they sent him to Kandahar. Mom doesn't even know where he's buried. That hasn't stopped her from loving him until now. You won't believe it, she even keeps his last gift. It's a small purple flower encased in epoxy resin. She hides it, doesn't show it to anyone, like it's her most precious treasure. Who would have thought? Candy pondered. Have you ever tried to find out anything about your real father? Like where he's buried and stuff? No. And why should I? Salvino shrugged indifferently. To me, that man is a nobody. I've always considered someone else my father. And if Mom wanted to, she could find out everything herself. What's stopping her? She must have her reasons. I don't think I have the right to interfere. But do you at least know who this man was? What was his name? Candy pressed on. Yes, Mom told me, his name was Tomas Rivas. He was 3 years older than her and went to the front as a young boy. He could have lived on, but he got expelled from the Institute, so he decided to spend his time in the army and then return to his studies. I didn't ask my mother much, I could see those memories caused her pain. And all this information is of no use to me. I see, Candy pondered. So your mother isn't made of stone after all. Well, I'll think more about what to get her. If she has a glimpse of emotions, then not all is lost. But please, you go see Melita yourself. Okay? I'd rather not have to deal with Senora Claudia any more than necessary. The next day, Candy couldn't focus on work. Yesterday's conversation with her husband wouldn't leave her mind. Something inside her suggested that breaking through her mother-in-law's defenses might be possible by digging into her past. Maybe I should find out where this Tomas Rivas is buried? Candy thought. What if the Gorgon learns and gets sentimental and becomes softer? Although, what if it goes the other way? She gets even angrier with me. Who knows? Finding the information isn't that hard, even if it was a long time ago. And if I don't come up with anything else, I'll present this information as a gift to her, and then she can decide how to deal with it. So, where did Salvino say they sent this Tomas? Kandahar? My uncle served there. Maybe he knows something? At lunchtime, Candy dashed out of the office and hurried to her uncle. Victor, a veteran of Afghanistan and a retired colonel, was her father's brother and lived nearby. He was very surprised to see his niece at his doorstep. Candy, what brings you here? He said in a deep bass. Uncle Victor, the girl threw her arms around him, I have something very important to discuss with you. Oh, really? I'm curious what could have happened that you came in person. You usually only show up on holidays. Uncle, my question is about your past. Your military past. Candy knew that he could talk about this forever. There were topics he avoided when recalling the horrors of war, and he often told stories about amusing incidents and unusual events. Is that so? Victor was surprised. Well, go ahead, ask, and if I can, I'll help. I'm looking for someone, Candy hesitated. More specifically, I know he died in Kandahar in the fall of '87. And now I'm looking for any information about him. I don't know where to start. I thought maybe you could help. You say he died? Which unit was he with? I don't even know. There's very little information. I only know his first and last name, his approximate age, and that he was a draftee. A draftee? In Kandahar? That was probably the 6th or 7th company. They usually didn't send rookies to us. There were only a couple of exceptions when things got really heated. What was his name? His rank? Tomas. Tomas Rivas. He was about 22 to 23 years old. I don't know his rank. Probably a private. He had just joined the army. I'm not an expert. Rivas, you say? Victor perked up. I knew a Rivas, but he was a lieutenant. But this Rivas is alive to this day. Hold on a second. Uncle got up and headed to the sideboard. After rummaging through the shelves, he pulled out a large photo album bound in burgundy leather and opened it roughly in the middle. Look at this. Victor pointed to one of the black and white photos, where a group of smiling men in military uniforms looked back at Candy. That's me in the center, as you can see. And that young guy in the striped shirt is Tomas Rivas, a lieutenant from the 6th Company. I don't know if he's the one you're looking for, but this guy is a real hero. He saved us all. We went into the mountains then, into a gorge, where militants were hiding. It was a real ambush, and he was inexperienced. He had just gone through military training at his institute, which is why he got sent to us as a rookie. I thought he wouldn't be much help, but the kid turned out to be not just capable, he wasn't afraid to risk his life for his comrades. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't be sitting here drinking tea now. He had a sixth sense. He sensed something was off right away and started raising the alarm. At that time, I was a major. I thought he was just an inexperienced soldier panicking. But something inside told me that his intuition wasn't wrong, and it turned out to be true. I put the whole company on high alert. We hid, and sure enough, they crawled out of the bushes. But we were ready. We fought them off, and we had the numerical advantage. Tomas really showed himself brilliantly that day. He even helped the wounded later, even though he lost his legs himself. Look here. Is this your sought-after man? I actually don't know what he looked like. Candy shook her head, but still looked closely at one of the photographs. And then she froze. From the blurry photo, across time and space, was looking at her. Salvino. Yes, the hairstyle was different, and he had a small mustache on his face, but she was certain she was looking at her own husband. You've gone pale, girl, Victor said, worried. Uncle, are you sure this man is alive? Well, he was alive and well at the last veterans meeting. Why do you ask? Is that him? He's a copy of my husband. Candy, come on, don't beat around the bush. Who are you looking for? Candy told her uncle everything. He sat there, frowning. So that's how it is. Interesting indeed. Life has its coincidences. Rivas told me that his girl was waiting for him. He showed me her picture. She was beautiful. Candy, you should go see him. He doesn't live here anymore, but in the region. By the way, he's a respected man. He became disabled but didn't give up. As far as I know, he has his own section in the village where he trains people who have lost limbs. They even regularly go to competitions. Here, write down his address. Candy, Salvino, and Melita arrived when the celebration was already in full swing. Claudia greeted them cheerfully and didn't snap at her daughter-in-law. Here, Mom, this is for you from all of us. Her son handed her an envelope. We thought you hadn't had a break in a long time. Oh, how nice. Claudia smiled at her son and the guests as she opened the envelope. Oh my God, what a lovely surprise. Son, you hit the mark with this gift. I was just thinking about going on a vacation somewhere. This is for you, Grandma. Melita handed her grandmother a handmade card that she had been working on for the past week. How beautiful. Claudia stroked her granddaughter's head. You can see you put in a lot of effort. Melita, you have artistic talent. You parents should think about enrolling her in an art school. Look, dear guests, at the talented granddaughter I'm raising. Immediately, there were exclamations of approval, and Melita even blushed with pleasure. And this is from me, Senora Claudia. Candy shyly handed her a small box. H.M. Claudia grimaced as she accepted the gift. Another silly thing. Why did you have to come up with something? The vacation package is more than enough. I bet it's another cheap trinket. Candy, how many times have I told you, it's better to give nothing at all than some silly thing? Candy turned beet red. Mom! Salvino exclaimed. You don't even know what's in there, and you're saying that. Candy worked really hard. Oh, come on. Claudia snorted and dramatically threw the box into the trash bin, where a pile of used napkins already lay. Candy couldn't take it anymore and burst into tears. She pushed her husband away and ran towards the exit. Salvino quickly picked up Melita and hurried after her, casting a reproachful glance at his mother. When the guests had left, Claudia sat alone on the couch, wondering if she had gone too far by publicly humiliating her daughter-in-law. Maybe I overreacted? She thought. I should have at least not thrown that little box away in front of her. Well, what could she have possibly given me? Another cheap trinket? I'd rather have a nice set of dishes. It wouldn't be embarrassing to show off and then shove into a corner. Well, a fool is a fool. At that moment, her phone beeped. Reluctantly, Claudia reached for it and opened a message from her son. Mom, you've outdone yourself. If you knew what Candy did, you would have acted differently. You have no conscience. Until you apologize to her, you can forget that you have a son and a granddaughter. That's just what I need. Claudia fumed. Because of some ragamuffin, Salvino has turned against me. What could she have possibly given me that turned everything upside down? Teresa. Yes, Senora Claudia, the housekeeper's head appeared at the door. Haven't you taken out the trash yet? No, I'm just about to. Please check. I threw away a box today. It was a mere trifle, but now there's such a fuss over it. If you find it, bring it to me. Okay? A minute later, Teresa, holding the package disdainfully between her thumb and index finger, placed it in front of her employer. It's a little dirty, but I wiped it with a napkin, she reported. No matter. Claudia grumbled and immediately untied the neatly tied blue ribbon. She hurriedly lifted the lid of the box and froze. The mask of disdain immediately fell from her face, giving way to a torrent of tears that flowed freely. Claudia carefully took what lay in the box. It was a small square of mica, or rather, 2 mica sheets with a tiny purple flower sandwiched between them. Claudia trembled as she reached for the doorbell. Candy opened the door. Candy, the mother-in-law looked down, feeling guilty. Hello, Senora Claudia. But Salvino and Melita aren't here. What did you want? I wanted to apologize. The woman flushed deeply. I behaved inappropriately. Forgive me, it shouldn't have happened. Your gift. Oh, you opened it after all? The daughter-in-law smiled sadly. Yes, Claudia whispered, opening her palm where the purple flower lay. Candy, tell me, where did you get this? I dare say that. Come in, Senora Claudia. Candy stepped aside. It's not right to talk on the doorstep. The mother-in-law entered the apartment behind her daughter-in-law. Candy silently poured tea into a cup and set a plate of freshly baked cookies on the table. I was with him, she broke the silence. With whom? Candy, don't joke with me now. I don't have the habit of mocking people, Senora Claudia. Candy smiled. I was with Tomas Rivas. He gave me the flower and said that you would understand everything as soon as you saw it. But how is that possible? Tears came to Claudia's eyes. Candy, my Tomas has been gone for over 30 years. My mother told me he died. I'm sorry that your mother is not alive now. Candy turned away. I think you would have had a lot to ask her about. What do you mean? Claudia jumped up from her chair. I mean that 36 years ago, she lied to you. I don't know what motivated her. There's no way to find that out now. Tomas was hospitalized with serious injuries. They amputated his leg. As soon as he came to, he called you, but your mother answered. Then he wrote to you several times, but she told him that you had gotten married and that he shouldn't bother you. But why? How could she? Yes, my parents were against my relationship with him, but not to the extent of lying. But why didn't he search for me? And why didn't you search for him? You didn't even try to find out where he was buried or talk to his family. I was scared and depressed at the time, and I left for Germany. I believed my mother. Candy, tell me, where is he now? Can I meet him? He lives in a town 10 kilometers from the city. If he didn't want to see you, he wouldn't have given me that flower. You should go to him right now. Why would he need me? He probably has a family of his own. Yes, he has 2 children, and he became a widower 3 years ago. I don't know, Senora Claudia, who needs whom, but Salvino told me that you still love Tomas. And Salvino himself would be glad to know that his real father is alive. I think Tomas would be happy to see both of you. He looked happy when I told him about you. Really? Claudia's face lit up. Really? Candy nodded. Claudia stood up and headed for the exit. Candy silently watched as her mother-in-law put on her coat. Forgive me. Claudia looked her in the eyes. I behaved poorly. I don't even know how I became so hardened. Candy, you gave me something I don't deserve, and I treated you like this. And really, forgive me for everything. I know you're a good girl and a worthy wife for my son. Thank you. Senora Claudia, Candy called out as her mother-in-law reached the elevator, good luck. And also, I understand this isn't the right time, but do you really think Melita has a talent for drawing? Absolutely. For the first time, her mother-in-law smiled at her daughter-in-law. Then maybe later you can recommend a school for her? Claudia didn't say anything, just nodded slightly and stepped into the open elevator doors.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.